Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Tango and Cash. So, me going back to this movie is just for a real nostalgic point because I remember watching this movie while also just seeing like a huge marathon of just action movies that would come out consistently. Hey, do you want to see every single Die Hard movie? No? Well, you're going to anyways. Like, did you want to see every single Rambo movie? Well, here you go. Did you want to see every Rocky film ever made? Ha! And so on and so forth. Like, we would have it to where there would be like at the fingertips of just go onto a channel to just see some action movie marathon, and why not, because there'd be like 5 to 8 of them to just choose from. Like, a lot of times we have it to where I think TV tends to easily just choose, like, oh, how about we just have Harry Potter being into a TV like day or whatever, so that way we can just easily just be able to just get through a whole day of not having to figure out what the heck we have to program onto a channel. We could be like, just, dude, this is Harry Potter Day, or this is Harry Potter Week, and there you go. Or Walking Dead, when Walking Dead would have been huge, or was huge. Just take the entire season and just spend weeks just watching it, and so on and so forth. So, going into also remembering it, there would just be these Sylvester Stallone marathons, or quite possibly Kurt Russell marathons, which would normally be like Escape from New York or Escape from LA. It wouldn't be the actual much other action movies that eventually I would have to scour the planet eventually to see at some point, like The Thing, or Big Trouble in Little China, or any number of other things that eventually would have escaped me at some point. I remember watching like Stallone movies like Over the Top and Cliffhanger, and then eventually I would go into also watching Tango and Cash. So yeah, I think Tango and Cash is kind of the blueprint of what, uh, especially buddy video games would try to copy and paste for I don't know how long. I think we really had it to where people realized the formula of like, oh, well, how about we just have two characters, but they're completely opposite to one another, and then people could choose the either more conservative route or the much more grittier, dirtier route, and that will be the Cash character, and that will be the Tango character, for so on and so forth. Because reasonably we have it within this movie that we have Sylvester Stallone's character, who is kind of the more story side of this movie, and we have Cash's character, who is the kind of very much action-packed character that has to chase after the thugs and has to press them for information and so on and so forth. I think the most interesting scenes going on in here are when both Tango and Cash are honestly together. To see them playing off one another is just amazing. When they're separate, you can just kind of just be like, yeah, but I like them being together. I honestly like them being together. They're actually so much fun working off one another than being portions of this time being separated. And so, really, when going into this movie, I really did enjoy reasonably the prison scenes. I think the prison scenes were just kind of the most interesting things going on in this movie, because reasonably you even have more time when both Stallone and Russell are together. So going into this movie, I find it fun. There's one grievance that I probably would have about this movie is I don't think that they build up the villain properly because I just don't think they care. I think all that matters to them is to build up Stallone and Russell because that's who they're going to have to pay the big fat checks for when this movie ends. Because I think the villain is just there in the movie and they bizarrely have to give him some kind of mouse and or rat thing that he has to hold consistently through this movie. Why? I don't know. But when going to this movie, I was kind of disappointed in the villain, to be brutally honest. I was like, why didn't they do anything to really build up this character? It seems like this character didn't really have a backstory. There was not like we had it to a reasonably. The main villain had to really rely on other characters to establish himself. Just be like, oh, well, I got this character that was actually from a portion of this story. And plus, also, we had it to where there, there was a feeling that we had both seemingly Stallone and Russell's character both incorporated in one character, but I guess, there was a lot of stuff that was just kind of made you feel like one person was otherwise tied to both, but not really. So, going on into this movie, I could say overall this movie was fun. Yeah, it kind of had like a Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, Stripes kind of ending to it. And reasonably, we have just kind of also like the stereotypical action sequences and stuff that probably were copied and pasted and picked over. And so, like, to have seen any buddy cop movie, I'm sure now, you're like, yeah, you could see a lot of stuff from this movie. But also, when looking into this film, I think there's a lot of unique things that is really also enjoyable within this movie. Having basically, I think the best parts are actually Tango simply being in prison. I think that's the best part of this entire movie. Cash probably being where he is before they end up going into like the earliest on things that you see of Cash in this movie is probably the best parts. I think we eventually have Cash more having to bounce the ball back and forth with Stallone. And I don't know, I think Kurt does better when he doesn't have to be in a ensemble movie. I think Kurt works better alone, to be brutally honest. When he's by himself and he has to sell you a movie, man, does he do amazing. But when he's working with an ensemble cast, you can just kind of see him just kind of very much be kind of, I think, a person that kind of takes a seat back of things, but also feels more feels more like, oh, okay, well, like, I don't have to do as much because I'm in this movie, but so I'm selling people tickets, or I'm here to just sell tickets. I'm not here to put on a good acting performance anymore. Like, my name's on the poster, la di da. Like, we have that kind of Kurt Russell now, where I think, sadly, I wish Kurt Russell would sell his own movies, to be brutally honest. Because I get it that Kurt Russell is like, well, dude, I'm not gonna be doing action movies anymore. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna sell my movie. I'm gonna be ensemble pieces now. I'm gonna be ensemble pieces. Why would I want to be? He'll still get a crap ton of money. But anyways, so let's go into the spoilers of this movie because I already started to go there. So let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time to go into Tango and Cash. So, in the very beginning of this movie, we have it to where Tango is chasing after this semi truck. That is I guess a oil tanker or whatever that usually ends up being for any semi truck. And so we end up having the helicopter that is, of course, chasing behind Stallone's car. And the helicopter is basically telling Stallone, hey, dude, like, we're getting past certain jurisdictions, so hey, Tango, you're on your own. And so Tango's like, okay, sure. So we end up having Tango speeding way up to have his car stopped in front of where the semi is going to head. And so we end up having this semi consistently driving where Stallone's car is, and I would have thought that, like, dude, is this guy going to hit Stallone's car, and that's going to be how this semi is going to get stopped? But no. So we end up having it to where Stallone ends up taking out his gun and takes out every single one of the bullets, throws them on the ground. I'm like, why would you have your gun with absolutely no bullets in it? Like, yeah, I completely load my gun with used bullets or bullets that I wasn't going to use because I want specific bullets in my gun. I don't know. It was a very bizarre scene. So we have it to where Stallone chucks out all of his bullets out of his gun to reload his gun, and I'm just like, why? And so we have to where Stallone takes his very tiny like gun and fires away at the semi to have the guy who is named Face in this movie freaking out because Stallone is firing at this truck. I'm like, well, yeah, of course he is. He's getting the guy to stop. So we have it to where the semi ends up forcibly stopping so quickly that the guys end up flying out of the windshield of the semi truck, and they end up flying out of the semi out of the window, and we end up having it to where the cops then arrive and they're all like, hey, nice work, Tango, and so on and so forth. And so people are saying, like, yeah, this doesn't quite make any kind of sense of why Tango had stopped these people. This has, excuse me, this has nothing to do with drugs. Why did he pull this over? And so we have it to where Stallone takes out his gun, fires into the tanker, and there is, of course, drugs that ends up being poured out of it. And so he's like, hey guys, you want to party? So we have it to where Tango, of course, did a good bust, and huzzah for him. So we end up having Tango getting his, like, basically his shoulder just patted on, like, good attaboy for you. So we have it to where we showcase, because Stallone character is more of the story, where Cash is more of the, like, action, I think. I think that's how to really try to figure out both of these characters. to be really opposites, because everything else just kind of screams that they both feel like the same kind of person. But anyways, so we have Tango's superior uh, mentioning to him like what are you even doing here? Like you dress like a banker and like what do you do like like shouldn't you have retired at this point? Like if you wanted like misery, why shouldn't you have gotten married? And so or why didn't you have gotten married by now? And so Tango is like, "Oh, is that a proposal?" Because we had that joke coming back around because eventually Kurt eventually uses that same joke. So we have it to where Tango ends up meeting with his sister Catherine, and Catherine is mentioning that she's going to go and move away. And it seems that Catherine is Terry Hatcher for one, but she is a dancer, of course, and so she's gonna eventually fall on her face. Eventually, we're gonna have Tango try and comfort her and throw money at her because that seems to be what he does. So we have it to where Catherine is telling her brother that she's going to leave. She's going to leave town, and Tango is like, "Well, like I don't think so. Like I don't trust you." And so Catherine mentions is like, "Well, hey, when I'm gonna go, I'm gonna be a good girl." And Tango's like, "Yeah, I don't trust you because immediately when you say that you're gonna be a good girl, I immediately think the very exact opposite," and so on and so forth. So pushing on, eventually, Tango is getting an important thing going on with him, and so we have it to where Tango eventually has to leave. So we have it to where we are to showcase now Cash. We have it to where seemingly Cash gets up, and it seems that there is a assassin basically at his doorstep, and so we have Cash going after this guy, chasing this guy down, and eventually, once Cash gets this person and arrests him and brings him in, we have it to where Cash realizes that this guy, this gunman, isn't giving up any information. And so we have it to where Cash goes and takes this guy, throws him on the floor, and puts a chair over his neck and basically squeezes the this guy's neck, and he says, "Okay, well, we're going to be playing English 101 right here in this locker room." And so we have it uh to where Cash goes and basically presses on this guy's neck until he gives up every little bit of information uh, that Cash wants, and he's like, "Oh, well, hey, isn't that easy? Like you learn English really well now, don't you?" Like, hey, like, and we have to where a cop comes in and kind of notices what they're doing, and he's like, "Hey, this is English 101. Like, hey, get out of here." And so we have it to where Cash is like squeezing the life out of this guy. This guy gives information, and then they leave. So we end up having Cash go into his office and realizes that the gun in his sight is off. And immediately I'm thinking like somebody either switched his gun or somebody messed with his gun. And so we have it to where Cash is going and grabbing a slice of pizza, looking a little like a slob, to be honest, to be brutally honest. Because it's meant to be that way. It's meant to look that way. Compared to Tango, there's kind of like business as usual. He's corporate banker guy. So we end up having both Tango and Cash end up forcibly going on to the exact same case. And so we end up seeing both Cash and Tango having very vastly different weaponry, which I thought was really interesting. So we have it to where both of them go to this place, and we end up finding out that there was a guy that was already dead there. And so we end up having the cops come shortly thereafter, Tango and Cash, and they end up finding Cash's gun on site. And Cash is saying, like, well, hey, that's my gun. It's like, why is my gun here? And so we end up having that Tango kind of gets like mixed up in this because he was also there. And so we have it to where both of them go on trial, and I kind of love the dialogue that Tango and Cash have every single time that anyone goes up to the stand and bullface lies. It seems that there was a recording that was otherwise dubbed or kind of edited to make both Tango and Cash look bad. And so we end up having like these specialty people go up and confirm that it was Tango and it was Cash saying these things. And we have it to where there's kind of witnesses that we had seen in past scenes and stuff along those lines. And I love the banter again between Tango and Cash, just saying like, "Oh God, I can't wait to just squeeze the life out of this guy once we get out of here." It's like, yeah, me too. And so like this back and forth, just like threatening the lives of whoever is going to come up there and go against either Tango and Cash. Like, I love these things where they were going right after this case was going to be over to eventually go and find out the real truth, which they eventually do. So, forcibly, Tango and Cash are forced to go to prison, and they were immediately thinking to one another, well, we're not going to be put in general population. There's no way. Like, dude, we're cops. There's no way we're going to be put in Gen Pop. So, we go on and we have it to where both Tango and Cash, of course, are being put in general population. And so we end up having this prison being like a real dumpster fire where we have it to where like prisoners are flinging all kinds of paper and pillows and everything that they could possibly think to chuck around and whatever. Like, it's really interesting. And so we have it to where the guy that Stallone had booked earlier, the guy known as Face, he is demanding, oh my God, could I have both of these guys, or could I have Tango like bunked with me, please? Could I just? And so we end up having Tango and Cash walking by, and Tango is like, God, I want a piece of you. And so we have Tango who grabs this guy's head and presses him up against the bar so hard that his face starts to bleed. And Tango says, like, well, hey, you want a piece of me? Like come and find me. I'll be here. Like, kind of really telling him, like, dude, you ain't got nothing on me. So we have both Cash and Tango showering, and of course we have, as a joking measure, that Cash ends up dropping the soap, and Tango's like, are you serious? You're dropping the soap? And he's like, oh, come on, tripod. Like, come on, like, don't take it for more than what it is. And so we end up having them both going on and on, kind of talking about one another. You would have thought that they would have really just separated during prison, but instead they try to buddy up, I guess, consistently, because they're kind of both on the same side of the sword kind of thing. And so we end up having Tango going with and bunking up with a prisoner that he calls Slinky, because this guy just consistently plays with the Slinky and says how rough and tough he is. And so we have Tango, who ends up taking this guy's slinky and slinking this guy into his bed to where he can't get out of it. And so we have Cash going and bunking with some other like big, massive guy where we have it to where Cash's bunkmate is barking orders, and Cash is like, "Well, yeah, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. That's exactly that is exactly yours." It's like he's like, "No, no, no, I'm not gonna argue with anything. Like, you got whatever you want. Like, this is all you, buddy. Like, I'm just gonna go in my bunk and then just try not to die." So we have it to where in the middle of the night, of course, Tango and Cash end up getting grabbed and put into this, I guess, boiler room esh like place of this prison where we are to see Face and Yves Parrot, who is who's Jack Palance, who is the main villain of this story, sneaking into the prison with Requin, who is the kind of the foreign guy with the razor blade things, or the the sling blade kind of thing, where like he's consistently bringing a blade to someone's throat, and threatening them. And so we have it to where, of course, when Cash goes through into this prison originally, he is reminded about how many numerous people that he had actually put away in this prison. And so now we have this scenario where every single person that either Tango or Cash had put away is possibly within this scene, all looking on to see what is to happen with either Tango or Cash. So we end up having these guys hoisted up onto this this thing. They are kind of like dangling onto this rope, and they are to be kind of like body chained all around onto this rope thing, and they are eventually to be lowered down into this tub of water, where they are to get electrocuted consistently over and over. And the interesting thing is we have Tango and Cash consistently telling one another, don't panic. Whatever you do, don't panic. They're telling one another that consistently. And we have it to where either one of them are saying, like, hey, I'm panicking. Like, and so we have it to where Cash eventually just loses his crap because he's like, dude, if I'm going to get killed by anybody, I'm not going to get killed by this foreign piece of crap. I want to get killed by an American. And so we end up having it to where both Tango and Cash are consistently dangling into these tubs one by one to get electrocuted. And we have it to where the villains are just kind of relishing in this. They're like, yeah, shock them, kill them, yeah. And so we end up having the prison guards eventually break into this scene of this onslaught all going on. And so the prisoners all scatter, and we have it to where all the villains all either get away or they basically have it to where, like, the main villain, of course, just goes off to the shadows because he's already there anyways. So we seemingly have it to where we have Cash, who has coincidentally a familiar face in this prison. And so, and I'm trying to figure out where exactly he is. Okay, so we end up having a seemingly former guy that Cash had worked with. I can't find where his name actually is. That is going to give both Tango and Cash information now that basically he is one of the people that is working in this prison, and he's one of the good guys. He's not one of the ones that is getting bought off. And we end up having this guy from this prison telling Tango and Cash, it's like, dude, like any number of these prison guards could have easily gotten bought off, so anything could quite possibly happen at this point, because the best course of action is for you guys to try and escape, or you're going to die, obviously. And so we end up having it to where Tango is kind of very distrusting to Cash's guy, because he's thinking that he's on the wrong side of the tracks. And Cash is telling Tango, like, dude, just shut up, because it's quite obvious that you have no plan whatsoever. Like, my plan A is better than your non-existent plan B, kind of thing. Or, and so on and so forth. So, and Cash is saying that Tango just misses his wardrobe. That's why he's so angry and bitter towards this other guy. And we have it to where Tango's like, yeah, I do miss my wardrobe. And so we have it to where Cash is like, dude, I'm breaking out. Like, are you coming? Because Tango's like, yeah, we'll just grab a spoon and we're just gonna just dig our way out. It's gonna work. Yeah, sure. So we have it to where this prison guy ends up giving Cash a like a job detail to where he can easily go and kind of do a job at night that ends up having him go through these parts of prison and then start to kind of sneak his way into the areas where he can try to escape. And so we have it to where Cash alone, because Tango said, dude, I'm not going. Like, no, like, I'm just gonna be fine here. And so we have it to where Cash goes and tries to find his prison guy that he had been talking to, and Cash ends up finding his prison guy who had his throat completely slitted, and so this guy is obviously dead. And so we end up finding face with a number of security guards that are now tracking down Cash while he's escaping, and all Cash has is a crowbar to his body. And so we have it to where Cash is trying with a crowbar to keep this door locked while he is in a room with a fan that is just consistently going. And this is either to lead to quite possibly Cash's death or Cash's death. And so we have it to where Cash slowly but surely slides down to get closer to the fan, because he's like, dude, this door is going to break. I'm going to have to come up with something. And so we have Tango, who comes out of nowhere, because that's what he does in this movie, and he takes a pipe of something and stops the fan from turning. And so we have it to where Cash is like, dude, I thought you were sticking around. And he's like, no, like I made another decision. And so we have it to where Tango's like, come on. And so we have it to where they are making their way through this bizarrish prison. They're making this really high up like crawl from this like pipeline, this pipe thing, and all kinds of things. And eventually they get to this part where there's like electricity, where like, hey man, if you touch one little wire, you're gonna die. And so they end up maneuvering past this little electrical part, and they now have to jump from this one rooftop to this wire and take a belt and like slide their way down. And and it's like, hey, good luck if you're gonna be able to jump and catch that. I wonder how many takes that took whoever to get that. But anyways, so we end up having Kurt going on and being the first to jump on this wire and take his belt and slide all the way down. And now was like, oh my god, like this is crazy. And so we end up having Stallone going like, well, I guess I'll get a running start. And so Stallone gets a running start, and so we end up having Face just like popping out of nowhere, grabbing Stallone's leg and starting to fight Stallone. And Stallone ends up going and overpowering Face and pushes him into the electrical wires where he just gets shocked to death. And so Stallone ends up running, then doing the exact same thing that Kurt Russell did and making his way to Kurt. And we have it to where Cash was like, well, hey, like, I thought you had, like, second thoughts. Like, where were you? And he's like, well, I had stuff to deal with. So, moving on. So, we end up having it to where Cash and Tango go their separate ways. And we end up having it to where Tango tells Cash, hey, if you ever need me, go to this one club and ask for Catherine, and she'll be able to get a hold of me. So we have Tango and Cash going their separate ways to find the people that they wanted to see after the trial was over and squeeze them for information. And so we end up having Tango going after a character called Wheeler, and we have Cash going after a character called Skinner. And so we end up having both of these characters kind of both giving information, but also we have the main villain who is like, dude, like, they have escaped, so we're going to tie up loose ends. Meaning, every single one of these guys that we paid off to give this information, we are going to now kill them off so this doesn't come back to us. So we have it to where Tango goes to Weiler, and he's immediately just like, dude, I'll do whatever you want, I'll say whatever you want me to say, and so on and so forth. He's telling the truth and whatever. And so while Weiler ends up running off, he ends up going into an explosion and dies. And we have it to where Tango ends up meeting up with Cash to find out what information that he finds, and so on and so forth. And kind of ends with the same kind of route. So, pushing on as much as humanly possible. So, Cash is to go to his tech expert, I guess, and kind of get some clothes and get some weapons and all kinds of things. And we have it to where Tango tries to go back to Catherine's home, which is actually his home, to go and get clothes, but that happens kind of a little bit later here. So we end up having Cash going on to the bar to go and find this girl named Catherine, and we end up having Kiki, or Catherine, going and dancing, and she, of course, dances with nothing on but basically a swimsuit. And so, because she's that kind of dancer, and so bizarrely, we have it to where Catherine is bizarrely doing this like drummer solo with her dancing, and you could kind of tell that a lot of it doesn't sound like in rhythm or with the music, or it's just kind of like whatever it is. And so we have Cash who is trying to sneak around to find Catherine, and Catherine notices Cash, and so she ends up trying to help him out because there are police that are also coming to this club as well. And so Catherine uh, ends up trying to lure some of the policemen off of Cash's scent so Cash could be able to get away. And so Catherine, after her set is over, ends up going and seeking out Cash and says, "Hey, I'm Catherine, so come with me," kind of thing. And so we end up having Cash talk to Catherine and figuring out how exactly Cash is going to sneak out of this club. And so we have it to where Cash goes and checks over this guy with this Elvis looking attire, and he's like, "Hey, Elvis, like, what size are you?" And so bizarrely, we have Catherine walking out in the motorcycle Elvis gear, bizarrely. And I was like, well, why did she have to change her outfit? That doesn't make any sense. And we have it to where Cash ends up going out in of course, all wig and dress and everything, silk stockings, whatever. Like he's head to toe dressed like a woman, and that's like I was like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm like, here's Kurt Russell like really having fun in a movie, and like those are the things that I honestly miss about a Kurt Russell movie is just him honestly having fun, because I think a lot of the times it's just you have it to where Kurt Russell is just the suit and tie guy where he's just there to say a couple lines and then leave. Like he doesn't go into a movie to have fun anymore, and or a lot of the lines that he delivers just feels very just phoned in, and everything kind of like the performance wise just feels kind of just phoned in. Sadly, it like it doesn't seem like he's having fun with his movies anymore. So going on into here, we have Kurt Russell, who is now with Catherine, and Catherine is giving Cash a massage, and Cash is trying to get some backstory of who Catherine is, kind of plugging her to ask if Catherine and Tango are lovers or what are they. And so we have it to where Catherine is delivering a lot of things that don't quite exactly mean exactly anything. Where she's just like, well, like me and Tango had been together here and there, but if anything, I'm my own woman, and like I do what I want, and so on and so forth. And like Cash is just like, yeah, but what does any of that mean? So we have it to where Tango ends up going to his actual home because he's the one that actually owns this place, and so we have it to where Tango walks in on what he is to think is Catherine and Cash doing it on the couch, but that is not to have all been the real thing. What ends up happening is that Catherine is giving Cash a massage, and bizarrely, funny enough, I like it when Tango is going and walking in on what sounds like some sex, but it's not. So we have it to where Tango goes and is hearing what he thinks is sex, but it's not exactly, and so we end up having God, I'm trying to. We end up having Tango noticing somebody in the distance, and so we have Tango who goes and runs after that said person, and like breaks a screen door to get to that person, and I'm not seeing this guy here. Oh, Captain Schroeder. Um, so we have basically Tango tackling this guy down, and this is the exact same guy that had told uh, Tango, "What are you even doing in this business anymore, dude? You're a business broker. You dress like a banker, like all suit and tie in business. What are you even doing here?" So we have the captain who is basically telling Tango and Cash, it's like, well, I'm gonna try to pretend that I didn't really see you here, but uh, like I'm gonna give you like a 48-hour window kind of thing. And so we have it to where Captain is giving Tango and Cash intel to try to figure out like where exactly all things had gone wrong and so on and so forth, to kind of give us like cop intel and so on and so forth. So we have it to where eventually Tango and Cash go and find the foreign guy, Requiem, or Requiem, whatever his name is, the kind of foreign guy that Kurt did not want to be killed by. So we have it to where Tango ends up duct taping a grenade to this guy's face to demand him give them information. And we have it to where Cash is just kind of playing it cool. He's just like, hey man, like, don't do it. Don't pull the pin, man. Don't do it. It's like, come on. Like, so we end up having it to where like Cash is trying to really like say how crazy Tango really is, and so we have it to where reasonably this guy ends up, of course, giving up information to tell them exactly where to go to find this evil doer, and so we end up going and having them go and pull the pin off this grenade and put this grenade into this guy's pants. And of course, the entire time it was a dud. And so we end up having Cash and Tango kind of like high fiving. They're like, yeah, man, you just fell for the dumbest trick in the book. Bad cop and worse cop. It's like, so is that kind of like the other guys where in the other guys movie with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell, is that where they got that from? Bad cop, worse cop? Like, did they steal that from that movie? But anyways, so we push on, and so we end up having Cash go to this tech guy, and he ends up giving them a vehicle that is like this van looking thing that has this like big machine gun esh like thing off to the side, and like it's really futuristic and cool looking and all that kind of stuff. And so we end up having it to where we find out that the parrot guy, that the Jack Palance guy, had ended up kidnapping Catherine and is now like holding her until Tango and Cash can come and rescue her, because that's the traditional way to kind of end a action movie. And so we end up having it to where Tango and Cash, just kind of guns blazing, makes their way through this obstacle course to get to this building. And they're like, God, how big is this maze of just all that, like, how many guys does this guy have? Like, holy crap. And so we end up having it to where eventually that this vehicle that Tango and Cash are in is getting sandwiched by these two construction vehicles that are just basically squeezing this car like cheese, to where eventually both Tango and Cash bail out of their vehicle to go and shoot down uh, every one of these guys that are working on these construction uh, vehicles, to go and stop them, so that way they could stop just in time to be right in front of this building coincidentally. So we have Tango and Cash going on and moving on into this building to eventually find the biggest, hugest, freaking-ish guns that they can find. And so they go in there, and so we end up having Parrot and whoever the thugs are left kind of like scared. They're like, "Oh no! Like, dude, we brokered a deal to get this Parrot guy to this Jack Palance guy to take down these Tango and Cash guys, but man, is he not doing his job." And so we have it to where Tango and Cash are just going in there, just guns blazing, killing all the bad guys. Eventually, they get to the same foreign guy that they had the dud grenade before, and uh, we have I believe Cash take that guy out while Tango is dealing with some guy that really likes to break glass. Just this guy is just a glass breaker. Every single move that this guy does breaks some kind of thing of glass somewhere, where they just had to build an entire set piece that was all made of glass so this guy could just break every single bit of it, because Stallone is just dodging every single hit that this guy is trying to make. And so we end up having it to where Cash ends up going and really taking down this guy that he's fighting. And so we end up having it to where they pull the same kind of thing again, where Cash ends up taking the pin out and he's like, "Well, hey, this one isn't a dud." And he puts it in the guy's pants, and he ends up shoving him down these flights of stairs, to where he goes kind of like careening down the stairs. And once he hits the very last step, the grenade ends up going off and it ends up exploding. So we have it to where they take out both of their guys that they need to take out. And so they make their way to the main villain that, of course, has some mirrored background. And so the main villain ends up telling them that there's a bomb in the building and they only have few minutes and whatever, what have you. And so we end up having it to where both Cash and Tango end up deciding, it's like, well, yeah, we're gonna shoot Parrot. We're obviously gonna shoot him in the kneecaps, right? And Tango's like, yeah, definitely kneecaps. And so we end up having it to where both of them shoot the main villain right in the head, and he ends up going down like a sack of potatoes. And we end up having it to where now both Cash and Tango have to show their work of how exactly they knew exactly where to shoot at. And so Tango had saw the reflection of the ring, that the ring had to be on the exact right finger to know where exactly to shoot. And Cash had saw some other piece of something to where he knew exactly where to shoot as well. And so we have it to where Cash is mentioning, like, man, we are really smart individuals, aren't we? And Tango's like, yeah. So Tango and Cash end up grabbing Catherine, and they are running like the devil out of this building. And coincidentally, they have the exact right place to run to then drop, because there's like a perfectly done like gap where they could conveniently like hide under to not get any kind of impact of anything. And so the bomb ends up going off, and we end up having it to where, like, hey man, yeah, we did it, right? Yeah, we did it. And so they end up high-fiving, and that high five ends up being like showcased onto a newspaper that says like, hey guys, guess who's back in the police department, like, look who are good guys yet again, because they ended up having evidence that proved that they were otherwise unjustifiably uh, imprisoned, and so on and so forth. And really, that's just how the movie just ends. We really have it to where consistently Cash had consistently mentioned to Stallone, well, hey man, I'm going to date your sister. And Tango is like, dude, over my dead body. And so, like, Cash is like, we'll see about that. Just consistently Cash is after Tango's sister, and I thought that that was really just funny, and so on and so forth. So I think that's what really ends the movie. And plus, let's get out of here before we end up getting over an hour. So I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.